Before we get into the stitching part and even start simulating, we also need to create the waistband, which we will do with the help of the top and the internal line tool. The internal lines are, as the name we suggest, meant replacing internal lines within our pattern for pocket or let's say any other accessories we may need. But they can also be used for cutting holes or separating our pattern. So if I select the internal polygon tool and zoom into my front patterns of the top, and let's just create line right here. Once you get through the end, just double click, and now I also want to create a line in the back. So let's zoom the back pattern, create a similar line. Now we are going to use the 3D window to align this. So I position the internal lines and external lines in same place. Okay, now they are aligned front and the back. Once I have this, I can simply select the line, right click, and I have two options, cut and sew. The cut option, what it does, it's simply going to separate this pattern as a rectangle by itself. But since I want top to be connected with the waistband, I am going to select the cut and sew option. Same I am doing with the back. Okay. So once I do that, I go to edit sewing tool. You can see that it not only separate the rectangle as separate pieces, but it also sew it back together. So we don't have any work to do at all, and I am going to do the same for the back pattern. Select the internal lines with transform pattern tool, right click and choose cut and sew. But since I don't need waistband separated into 4 rectangle, I am also going to merge the front 2 and the back 2 together. So I am going to select these lines with edit pattern tool and right click and select merge. Sometimes this process may delete the seam lines. That's why I always check it. Still there with the edit sewing tool. So let's do the same as we did for the back pattern. So right click and merge. Now we have created waistband that is made up of two rectangles, the front, this one, and the back. And now we can begin by stitching everything together. So we are going to take our segment sewing tool, because when I look at these shots, all I see are very simple lines that I would like to connect. I would like to connect the front pieces in the middle. So let's do that. And of course the back pieces together. I would also like to connect the front side piece with this. Don't forget to observe the blue dot if you are not sure on how to stitch this together, and also between her legs. So I would like to stitch this with this side, and as you can see the seam lines are going to straight. Now I also need to connect the shorts part with the waistband, and that shouldn't be too hard since I still have a point right here. So I can simply just sew this front pattern to this part of the waist belt, and I can do that by simply clicking and connecting them, and same goes for others. And here I have the same. Select the back pattern with this side, sew with this part of the waist belt, and this side with this part of the waist belt. I quickly take a look. I see that everything is bind, but before I start simulating, I am also going to freeze some pattern. Freezing is a very good idea once your outfit is complex, and like in our case we are adding more pieces of the garment. So once you start simulating, the newly made seam line are going to start pulling everything including the top. So I would like to secure its position. So I am just going to select all of this including the waist belt. Right click and select freeze, and everything is sort of bluish, which indicates that we freeze it. And now let's simulate by pressing spacebar. Alright, now that is done, I can unfreeze the top by selecting the patterns, right click and select unfreeze. Now we can readjusting the shorts. I think they are little bit too long and of course too tight on her. So I am going to take my edit pattern tool and grab the sideline of the front and back and try to make the shorts too loose on her and maybe shorter as well. Just select the back pattern and move them little bit. Now simulate. I would also want this ends. Select the edit pattern tool, this end and this end a bit upwards and little bit more sticky out than the rest of the fabric. Okay, I think we can afford to make them a bit looser, and that's a bit too much now. Okay, now press spacebar for simulating them. So you see, with editing pattern every millimeters counts, and you can really spend a lot of time tweaking and detailing and observing the changes in the 3D window and getting the final effect that you want. But since we are not go and create anything specific in this module, we will leave them at this stage and change them later.